Let's begin. Rabbi Sachs is going to be discussing a lesson from the Torah portion on the pasuk of Lech Lecha. It's the Parsha of Lech Lecha, but the pasuk that he's really discussing are those words, the title words, which is the title is Lech Lecha. Go. It generally is translated "go for yourself from your land," and for your benefit. Go for your benefit from your land and from your birthplace, from your father's house, to the land that I will show you. And that's the first verse of the Torah portion. Rabbi Sachs is going to try to take that pasuk and make that as if it's, or it is maybe, a major breakthrough of what Yiddishkeit is all about. He sort of wants to put it all into that pasuk and say that's the secret of the way of life of the Jewish people. And it makes sense because these are the first words that Hashem gave to Avraham. In other words, Avram served Hashem throughout his life from the age of 3. He recognized Hashem, and then, so on and so forth. He came to the realization and came to serving Hashem and so on. But the first episode where he was spoken to by Hashem was at the age of 75. At the age of 75, Hashem told him to leave his birthplace, to leave his father's house, so on, go to Eretz Yisrael, go to Israel, Eretz Canaan. And it seemingly this is a very powerful message. And just to mention, even though Rabbi Sachs doesn't mention this, that Lech Lecha itself, the literal words of Lech Lecha, means go to yourself, which does fit with Rabbi Sachs's title, Inner Directedness, which is, going into ourselves. Lech Lecha, go to yourself, go to you. So I'm guessing that that's maybe what he had in mind by choosing that title. Although we'll soon see. I mean, he's basing his essay on a book called The Lonely Crowd, which I'm told it was a very popular book 50 years ago. Even though I'm not familiar with it, but I mentioned this to some of my older friends, and some of them said they read it. They're in their 80s and 90s, and they were telling me they read this book. So it seems that it was a popular book. So Rabbi Sachs, and it was a book by a sociologist. So they're, which fits very well with Rabbi Sachs's style. He's trying to figure out how society works and what the tricks are, what are the secrets of making a successful society, and how do the Jewish people succeed over the years. So Rabbi Sachs begins his essay with the question of, how do we become the way we are? Where do we get our character from? Our courageousness, our calmness, our charisma, what does it come from? Is it a personal thing that you're born with, or is it the culture that you're brought up in? And where does what plays a role in developing people and in our personal character? So Rabbi Sachs brings from this book called The Lonely Crowd, which was a question posed by 3 great American Jewish sociologists. And their argument was that particular kinds of historical circumstance give rise to particular kinds of people. So it does make a difference where you lived, what society you lived, and if the society you were in was on the brink of growth or the early stages of decline, these all played a major role. Each gave rise to its own type of character. And not that everyone was the same, but in general sense, you could discern certain traits in the culture as a whole. So he says there, in a culture that had a high birth and death rate society, such as non-industrialized societies or Europe in the Middle Ages. So he says that they had high birth and high death rate. He said in that type of society, it was all about tradition. They were tradition-directed people. They did what they did because that's how things were always done. And the primary struggle was to stay alive. The order was preserved by ensuring that people stuck to the rules. They stuck to the way they were told to be, and failure to do so gave rise to shame. So that was the one type of society that was all about tradition. Now, Rabbi Sachs jumps to two other options. There's the society that's on the brink of growth, and then you have society that's on the brink of decline. So if it's on the brink of growth, he says that was like Europe during the Renaissance and Reformation. He says if you want to give a term for it, he calls it the inner directed types. Culture is in a state of change. There is a high personal mobility, a mood for invention and exploration. This means people have constantly to adapt to new challenges without losing a sense of where they are going and why, which means facing the future while keeping faith with the past. And such societies pay great attention to education. The young internalize the values which stay with them through life as a way of negating change without being disoriented. And they carry their inner world with them, whatever they do and wherever they go. And they have an element of guilt if they don't do things right, if they fail. So this is an interesting type of society where they're big into invention and exploration. They come up with new discoveries, and it's a sort of like a combination of tradition with realization of that there are changes happening, and we have to adapt to whatever the situation is, and moving forward with what's happening around us, but at the same time keeping the faith. So it's like a hybrid. And then he says, then you have the societies that have already achieved maximal growth, and those are on the brink of decline. He says life expectancy has risen, birth rates falls because people have everything they want. They're not they want more of a luxurious life. They don't want to be burdened with different headaches and too many kids, too many, they've reached maximum growth, affluence. Much of the burden of care has been taken over by centralized agencies, and there's less need for the driven, focused, resilient, inner-directed types of an earlier age. The mood is no longer of scarcity, but of abundance. The primary problem is not dealing with the material environment. It is getting on with winning the approval of others. So this is the typical situation of today's day and age, where people have everything yet they feel like they have nothing. And all they want is other people's approval. That's the situation today. He says that is when the third character type emerges. He calls it the other directed individual. So again, we got three types of people. We've got three types of societies. We've got the tradition based, we have the inner directed people, and then we have the other directed people. And other directed people means that they're based on getting the endorsement and other people approval of other people. And their source of direction in life, what is it based on? It's based on contemporary culture. Other directed people seek not so much to be esteemed, but to be loved. And when they fail, they feel not shame or guilt, they only feel anxiety. So this is based on that book that had written by sociologists, that this is what their findings were. And Rabbi Sachs now jumps to the Torah portion. I mean, he mentions that in America, we have this issue now with that it's like other directed individuals. And he says it's much worse now with Facebook and all these other high-tech new applications. But then he jumps to the Torah portion. So that's where we started over here. What is the Torah portion, and what is the first verse of the Torah portion? Hashem told Avram, Lech Lecha, go forth from your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to the land that I shall show you. So what does that really mean? And I added a point here that I think would be beautiful if Rabbi Sachs would have added it. And that is that the word Lech Lecha is, let me just mute everyone here. If anyone wants to ask anything, feel free to ask. And if you're on a phone, you can press *6. Otherwise, you're muted. If you want to unmute and you're on a phone, you might need to press *6. So the word in the Torah is Lech Lecha, go to yourself, which sounds like go and dig deep inside, dig into you. And the way Rabbi Sachs translates it is Avram was commanded to leave behind the sources of both tradition directedness and other directness, and which tradition would be your father's house, your land and your birthplace would be like other directness, like getting the approval of others, the culture, the contemporary culture. And what are you meant to be? It's all about becoming the father of an inner directed people. Now, my thought is the inner directed people fits very well with Lech Lecha. Go to yourself, go inside yourself, go to your inner highest level of your soul. Go to find what your soul is telling you. And Rabbi Sachs talks about Abraham, that his entire life was governed by his inner voice, the voice of Hashem. He did not behave the way he did because that's how people always acted, or because that's that was his age group would follow that way of doing things. He had the courage to be on one side of the world while the entire world was on the other side. And his mission was that we read it in next week's Torah portion. In order that he instructs his children and his household to follow in the way of Hashem, doing what is right and what is just, so that they too would carry on this inner voice. Wherever they went, they should follow that. It was a morality of righteousness and guilt, I guess, if they failed, and not about honor and shame, conformism, anxiety. the centrality of education in Judaism, since Jews have to hold fast to their values, even when they were a minority in a culture whose values were diametrically opposed to their own, is all about following morals, the morality of righteousness and guilt. So this is Rabbi Sax's insight into this three ways of looking at or three different societies and how Judaism is directed. And one of the things that I think Rabbi Sachs is trying to do here, in addition to explaining the pasuk, again, this is a very powerful verse because this is the first pasuk, the first verse that Hashem speaks to Avraham, even though Avram served Hashem throughout his life. And there are different stages brought in midrashic sources of when he recognized Hashem and when he started. He was different levels of his, I guess, subservience to Hashem, following Hashem. But ultimately, the first time Hashem speaks to him is at the age of 75 when he says Lech Lecha. This is the first time. So it's a very powerful pasuk where Hashem is, of course, every pasuk in the Torah, how could we minimize the value of any pasuk? But this is a pasuk that has tremendous insight into it, as this is the beginning, this is the origin of the Jewish people. This is Hashem speaking to Avraham, our forefather. And what does he tell him? He tells him, Lech Lecha, go to yourself, and don't stay in your father's house or in your birthplace and so on. Go away, And the way Rabbi Sachs is putting it, it's all about this type of society of being the inner directed people instead of a tradition directed people or other directed people. And what I wanted to say was that what it seems like to me is that Rabbi Sachs trying to figure out what is so unique about the Jewish people, and the surprising thing about Jewish people is that we seem to be very tradition based, and being very tradition based didn't always bring out the best results. In other words, tradition based, at least the way these sociologists show it, is that people that were very tradition based, they didn't really have much discoveries, much inventions. They sort of like left things to their tradition, and they didn't really grow and thrive. And they do what they do because that's what they do. And in a certain sense, a lot of the times we think of Judaism as we're very tradition based. I think Rabbi Sachs wanted to bring this out in this essay that it's totally not. We're not totally not tradition based, but you don't call ourselves tradition based because we have a greater mission, that tradition, we follow tradition, but it's part of this idea of Lech Lecha, of still growing and going and bringing our morals with us, our values with us wherever we go, and having that voice of Hashem in us. And so it's not just following tradition, which I think many people would say that's, if you ask people, which group of Rabbi Sachs's three options would you put Judaism in? Would it be the tradition-based? Would it be the Facebook style of what he calls other directedness, which means getting approval of others, or would you put us in the inner directedness? And I think a lot of people would probably say tradition-based. I think Rabbi Sachs is getting at, that's not exactly what Judaism is all about. It's more about Lech Lecha me'artzecha, leaving tradition. But it doesn't mean leaving tradition. It means don't just shut off your brain and say we just follow tradition and we don't have to study it all and go any further, develop. We follow our tradition and that's it. That's not Judaism. Judaism really is this inner directedness where, let me just mute here. Where inner directedness, where we take the traditions of the past, but at the same time, we bring with us wherever we are in a way that we're resilient to the outside, to the external, but we bring with us morality of righteousness, and we have in us this idea of thriving, flourishing, growing, and doing more, and not just sitting back and having that tradition-based type of society. So to me, it's an interesting insight that Rabbi Sachs is getting at, because I think people, when you just think on a simple level, you say, "Oh yeah, we are very tradition-based," but it's so much more than that. And Rabbi Sachs continues here. He says, hence the astonishing resilience of Jews throughout the ages, their ability to survive change, insecurity, even catastrophe. People whose values are indelibly engraved in their minds and souls can stand firm against the majority and persist in their identity, even when others are losing theirs. It was that inner voice that guided the patriarchs and matriarchs throughout the book of Genesis, long before they had become a nation in their own right, and before the more public miracles of the book of Exodus. And so it's about that inner voice that we go with, which you could say it's Hashem inside us, the neshama, the soul, the pintal yid. This is what we are taking with us, and that's what's guiding us. And we're, in a certain sense, leaving. We're not limited. We're not staying in our father's house, our birthplace, our land and our birthplace, which Rabbi Sachs explains to mean the culture of today. In other words, we don't conform to the culture of that's around us in the secular world, but instead we have to the place that Hashem shows us, which is that inner voice that he's terming it. Jewish identity is that inner voice learned in childhood, reinforced by lifelong study, rehearsed daily in ritual and prayer. And that is what gives us a sense of direction in life. It gives us the confidence of knowing that Judaism, virtually alone among the cultures of civilization of its day, has survived, while the rest has been consigned to history. And that's another big discussion of how has Judaism survived so long while all the other nations have perished. All the other major nations have perished. And so it has the way, at least one of the insights that we see here is it's the inner voice of Jewish identity, lifelong study, prayer, ritual and prayer on a daily basis, which gives us a sense of direction, the confidence that we have is from that. Even though we're alone amongst everyone else, it is what allows us to avoid the false turns and temptations of the present while availing ourselves of its genuine benefits and blessings. So this is the inner directed people that Rabbi Sachs is talking about. The Jewish people, exploring the new and unknown, even while keeping faith with the old. He says there was an article in Time magazine about Jerusalem being one of the world's most ancient religious centers, but one of the world's 5 fastest growing centers for high-tech startups, which is really incredible because you find it all the time. Every month, every few months, we see on the news, this Israeli company was just bought out for $5 billion. And that one was just bought out for $50 billion. You know, some of these major, some companies we don't even know about, but also some companies that we are familiar with, and some of the apps that we're familiar with, they're all from the Jewish people. Tradition-directed people live in the past. Other directed people live in the present. But inner-directed people carry the past into the present, which is how they have the confidence to build the future. So it's about this merging of the tradition with the present in order to build the future. So Rabbi Sachs concludes, he says, this life-changing idea of inner directedness, the courage to be different, began with the words Lech Lecha, which could be translated as "go to yourself." Oh, he ends off maybe like he ends off with this, which is what I thought was so powerful. Go to yourself. This means follow the inner voice, as did those who came before you, continuing their journey by bringing timeless values to a rapidly changing world. So it's a very interesting insight about, you know, how we succeeded over the generations and what the secret of our success has been. And it all started with the words of Lech Lecha, go to yourself. So I have to correct myself. I didn't realize the last paragraph that I prepared this without, I thought I knew the whole thing already when I came to the last little 3 lines. I thought, I know already what he's going to say. Okay. But I see he actually ends off with that good line that I thought was important. Go to yourself, Lech Lecha. So it fits right in with the wording of the title of the Torah portion and the verse that he's quoting. It's all about following that inner voice, and by doing that, we really bring the tradition into wherever we go, because we're not affected by the secular and outside world, and instead we take with us what we have in the inside. And it's a very powerful idea. And Rabbi Sachs says that's the reason why we have so many innovations and discoveries and amongst the Jewish people. And if you look through the history, it's incredible, how disproportionate it is that there's so many Yidden, even though we make a tiny fraction of the population, but how we have discovered a huge amount of the discoveries have been discovered by Jewish people. And
that's why the Goyim don't like us. They're jealous. They're jealous of that.
Well, there's no question about that. They're jealous. That's true. That's true for sure. But I wanted to bring with this, I wanted to bring the Hasidic insight into these words, because it also gives that it gives that emphasis on how this Torah portion and this pasuk, this verse, is a major lesson, and it's a major part of what Jewish life is meant to be, what Jewishness is all about. This is the first words Hashem told Abraham, and so in Hasidic writings, it mentions that Lech Lecha, which means go to yourself. It means reveal your true identity as a Jew, as a child of Abraham. Lech Lecha me'artzecha, go from your land, which Rabbi Sachs had put as go from your, from the culture that's around you. But the Hasidic teachings say from your land, earth, from your earthliness, from your coarseness. Go out of your grabkeit, your earthliness, your gashmius, your physicality, your materialistic. Go out of your materialism, and that's your land. Go away from your land. Meiladetecha, your birthplace, means that go away from doing things out of rote. In other words, we don't just follow tradition in a way of yeah, that's it. It's we do things by rote. We got used to it. We were brought up that way. We just keep on doing. We have to go out of that. Doing things as a habit, as routine, that's not what Hashem wants. In other words, we are supposed to be passionate about it, not just doing things from our birthplace, from the way we were brought up to do things. And then from your house of your father, a father means in Hasidic teachings or in Kabbalistic teachings, the father is wisdom and the mother is understanding. So it's like go away from your wisdom, which means go away from your logic. That it's not about understanding everything. Don't expect that you should rationalize everything. You have to go beyond that. Understand that. Not that you can't. Not that you shouldn't try to understand things, but that you have to realize that Torah in Judaism is all about transcending the wisdom. So we have to go away from Beis Avicha, from the thought that everything is based on logic. We have to transcend logic. We have to go away from that way of thinking. And where do we go? We have to go to the land, El Haaretz, Asher Areka, to the land that I will show you. What does that mean? It means that Hashem will lead us and help us reveal our neshama, will help us reveal ourselves, our soul, reveal spirituality to us, and we'll go to the land that I will show you, which is the land of holiness, of spirituality, the land that we're meant to be in. And so this is in Hasidic writings, it's all about leaving all of these negative ways of serving Hashem in order to reach a way of serving Hashem that transcends the worldly ideas that we have, logic, physicality. We have to serve Hashem in a way that transcends this. And what is this based on? This is based on the fact that there's a famous question. One of the questions that's asked in Hasidic philosophy is, why doesn't the Torah mention the test that Abraham was tested when he was thrown into the furnace? It's this story, a famous story where Abraham had destroyed his father's idols, and his father brought him to the king Nimrod and told him, Abraham told his father, what the big idol killed the small idols, and the father said, the idols can't do anything. So Abraham said, well, then why are you selling them and tricking people and misleading people? And ultimately, he destroyed his father's business. His father took him to Nimrod, the king, and Nimrod basically threw him into a furnace. If you believe in Hashem, let him save you. That was his claim. You believe there's really a God that sees and that can do anything and runs the world. So then let your God save you. I'll throw you into the furnace. Let's see if it works. So he threw him into the furnace. And Avraham came out of a boiling hot furnace with not a single burn. He was miraculously in there in the Garden of Eden. That was his entry there. Was Hashem basically put him into the Garden of Eden, and he enjoyed some great spiritual time. But the thing is that the Torah doesn't mention this story. It's mentioned in the books, in the Midrashic books, but it doesn't say it in the actual Torah. The question is, why doesn't it really mention it? Why doesn't it say it in the Torah? It would seemingly be a very powerful story. And the answer that's given is that Avraham, until this point, Avraham is really serving Hashem based on logic. He came to the realization that Hashem is real. He came to that realization on his own. He didn't have any teaching from Hashem otherwise. It was all based on his own research, on his own findings, on his own discoveries. And the first time that we really see Abraham, that Hashem tells him to do something, is Parshas Lech, is this Torah portion. Because what Hashem was telling him really was that I want you to leave your logic. I want you to leave the way you were serving me until now. I'm giving you a whole new mission. Your whole life, the whole perspective is changing now. The whole perspective, your perspective until now was based on you. It was based on you. I want you to leave, to go out of that and to the land that I will show you. It's going to be based on me now. It's going to be based on not yourself, but on Hashem. It's a relationship that's based on the infinite, based on the Almighty. It's based on Hashem, and it's not based on a human. And that relationship is infinitely greater than a relationship that's based on the limitations of humanity. It's Hashem initiating it. Hashem saying, Hashem telling him, Lech lecha me'artzecha, I want you to go out of the way you're doing things based on yourself. Go out of that. Go to the deeper self. In other words, the neshama, which is a portion of Hashem. And so it's getting out of the physical, the arts, the land, your coarse land. Get out of your personal self, your wisdom, which is your father's house. That's wisdom, and leave all that and come to the place that I will show you. And this is why it mentions this, because this is the relationship that we have, that Hashem created with Avraham. It wasn't based on logic, it transcended logic. And that seemingly leads us to something later in the Torah portion, interesting continuation of this, where there's a story, a part of this Torah portion, where Avraham finds out that his nephew Lot was captured, hostage. And so what does Avraham do? He goes to save him. This is his nephew. Who told Avraham that Lot was captured? A giant by the name of Og. This giant, Og, he was so sincere that he wanted to, so caring that he wanted to help save Lot. He felt bad for Lot being going to die. This Og could care less. Could have killed millions of people, maybe. Who knows how many people he killed in his lifetime. He didn't care about Lot being alive. So why did he go and tell Avraham that your nephew Lot is hostage? Why did he tell him that? So Rashi tells us because he had an ulterior motive. He really wanted to marry Sarah. It does say in different places in the Talmud, it mentions that Sarah was a tremendously beautiful woman, I'm sorry, Ezra, did you say something? I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I just said beautiful one.
Oh, thank you. She was exceptional beauty. And Og, it says, wanted to marry her. It doesn't say why, but I'm guessing because the Talmud mentions that because she was of exceptional beauty. And he figured the way to marry her would be, let me get Avraham out of the picture. What's an easy way of getting a nice Jewish guy out of the picture? Send him to war. What does a Jew know about fighting a war? Avraham, a rabbi with a beard, what would he know about fighting a war? Oig was like, this is no brainer. I'll get him to the war. They'll easily, they'll easily take him down, and I'll be able to marry Sarah. So Oig had his whole plan all set up, but he didn't realize that Jewish people, as much as they don't know how to fight wars, they win them. And it's part and parcel of being Jewish, is even if it doesn't, totally doesn't make sense. What about the story of Hanukkah? It's unbelievable miracles that we've had throughout the story of Yeshua and Shoftim. We win wars, whether it makes sense or not. Most of the time, it didn't make sense, but we win wars. And so the story with Abraham is that Oig came to Abraham, and what was Abraham in the middle of doing? So the Medrash says he was in the middle of eating matzah. That's a very surprising thing. What does it matter to us to tell us what he was doing, that he was in the middle of eating matzah? That seemingly is like an extra side point that maybe shouldn't even be mentioned. Why does it mention it in the Medrash? He's eating matzah. So the understanding is, which means that it was during Passover. Of course, that's what the Medrash is saying. But like, what do we need to know that for? The story is he saved him. Okay, well, we need to know that he was in the middle of eating matzah and it's Passover. So the point is, what is matzah? Matzah is called bread of faith. Bread of faith means that you do things that are irrational. So Oig felt this is a perfect sign for me to get Avraham to go fight this war, because under normal circumstances, Avraham is not so stupid. He's not going to just run after a big army and he's going to fight a whole army. Like, what was he thinking? He's an old man with a long beard. He's he's not a young guy, and he's probably in his 80s, and he's going to fight a war. So Oig saw that he's eating matzah. This is a guy that's he's in his religious traditions of transcending logic. He's not so rational. So this is a good time. I'll get him to make him feel bad about his nephew. Let him go to war. I'll win him over. So sure enough, he tells him about his nephew, and he said that this is you got to go save him. This is your nephew. You should go and save Light, save your nephew. So what happened? Avram went. The problem was Avram won. Avram won the war. What was the mistake that Oig made? So Oig made a mistake. The mistake that Oig made was that when Hashem sees that we serve him in a way that transcends logic, he also gives us supernatural success, and we win wars. So in other words, it's a mistake that Oig made, that he only thought about the irrational element of how we serve Hashem, but he missed out on the fact that Hashem reciprocates, and he gives us that rational, that supernatural success in being able to in accomplishing whatever we need to accomplish. So Abraham defeated those armies, and he even saved people's lives in addition to light, and he basically ruined the evil plan of Og. And so that's the idea of going transcending logic, that it's our matzah, it's our bread of faith. It's the fact that we don't follow what would make sense, but we follow what Hashem really wants from us. And by doing that, Hashem reciprocates, and he gives us it's not limited to the nature, to the rules of nature. Another thing similar, along the similar lines, we find where it says Hashem appeared to Avram in a vision, and he said, "Do not fear, Altira Avram, do not fear, Avram." He says, "Anoichi mogen lach, I am going to be your shield, and scharcha harbe miyod, your reward is very large, is very big." And this is where Abraham was concerned that he doesn't have children, and he was concerned maybe that he would be punished for. Rashi tells us that after he won this war, and he killed the kings, so he was nervous. Maybe I received all my reward already, and I'm not going to get the rewards that Hashem promised me. He was supposed to get the land of Israel and offspring. So he's nervous now. He just lost all of his rewards because he just, he had great, he got all these gifts from Hashem that he was able to win this war. So he's nervous. Maybe I lost my rewards. I received it already. I received my rewards in other ways, so to speak. I used it up. So maybe I'll get punished. So Hashem said, "Don't worry. You're not going to get punished. And this that you're worried about your rewards, your reward is very great." So the question is, reward is very great. Maybe it seems a little surprising, because the reward should be commensurate with what his deeds were. Not just very great. Very great sounds like you get more than what your deeds are. And why is that? Do we really get rewards more than our deeds, or is it along the same? Is it along the same thing with the midah keneged midah, measure for measure, or is there something extra that we get? So the understanding is we get both. We get a finite reward, and we get an infinite reward. And the reason for that is, in every mitzvah, we refine, we fulfill the actual law in a finite manner, but we also fulfill the infinite will of Hashem. In other words, I shouldn't say the infinite will, the will of the infinite God. So we fulfill Hashem's will, and by fulfilling any commandment, we are connecting with infinity. And so the actual mitzvah itself has its limitations. You do this in this way, this measurement, this is the amount that you have to, this is how much, and how everything has its limitations. But there's also the fact that we're connecting to Hashem, who's infinite, and so therefore our reward is more than what measure for measure really would dictate. And so that's the idea here. So what we're seeing here is a few continuation of these ideas of how the Jewish people left from being the original way Abraham was, which was a nation based on logic, which was good logic. We came to the realization, Abraham came to the realization that there's a God. It sounds like good logic. It wasn't logic used for any negative purpose. It's a very positive thing. But at the same time, Hashem said, I want you to reach a higher level. And so we left the level of logic, of fulfillment that was based on based on logic, and we jumped to a level where Hashem tells Abraham, leave your birthplace, leave your father's house. Your father's house is logic. Your birthplace is the rote, the way you were brought up to do things, the custom, the things that you're just familiarized with, and leave that and go to the place that I will show you, which is based on Hashem's connect, based on the infinite, based on transcending all of these things. And we have to follow that idea of transcendence, and that what we see later. Avram does that. He goes and he transcends. He's eating matzah. Why was he eating matzah on Pesach? They didn't even leave Egypt yet. They didn't. He's commemorating something that never even happened. Transcending logic. He's eating matzah because that's the way the Jewish people are going to do it later. Could have easily gotten out of it. I don't have to follow the commandments. But it was all about transcending logic, and he went to fight the war. He went to fight these 4 strong kings that won. They won 5 kings. If you read in the Torah portion this week, you have the 4 kings fighting the 5 kings, and they won. And that's where Lot got captured, because the Lot was amongst the 5 kings. He was with those 5. He was in the area of Sodom, which was the 5 kings' areas. So he got captured hostage in those areas. And the 4 kings won over them. They were very strong. And Abraham went and fought them. And he won. And he went, it was way beyond logic, transcended logic. But that's what it's all about. That because he transcended logic, Hashem also transcends all logic and all rationalization. And Hashem gives us everything that we need to succeed. And then we have, and then we had that idea of reward is our reward is not really limited to the limitation of our literal action. It really transcends just the action. It really connects us to the infinity of Hashem, and so our reward is greater than we can imagine. And another thing that we find in the Torah portion this week is the idea that Hashem directs our steps. I see Ezra wants to say something over here, because I see in the chat. What did you want to say, Ezra? Tell us. For some reason.
Said he went with 318 men. So
Right.
why 318? 318 is the gematria of Siach, like Siach Siftotenu.
Uh-huh.
Through our
Prayer.
That's what enabled him to win. He didn't have to have numbers. All he had was prayer. That's what gave him the strength, and that's why Hashem was with him, because it wasn't. It's not through might, but it's through his belief and his prayer that he was able to do that.
Good insight. Let me explain it. The actual Chumash mentions that Abraham went with 318 men, but the commentaries explain that the 318 was not literal, and it really was Eliezer, his servant. He went with his servant Eliezer, which makes the story incredible story. He went with his basically his servant Vayorek es Chanichov, and it says Eliezer Levado. It was only Eliezer. This is the gematria, the numerical value of Eliezer was 318. So it means he only went with basically 2 people, and they basically won this war. I mean, it's like incredible type of thing. But the point that Ezra is telling us is that there's also another insight here, and that is that it was 318, which is the number of people that it says he went with, is also another numerical value, which means the talk, the prayer, the speech of prayer or of Torah study that it was the 318. It's the prayer that he did that made him win the war. It's the 318, not literally people, but it's the 318, meaning the numerical value of prayer, which I think that's what your insight is, Ezra, which is, I'm not sure who the source of it, but it's a very nice insight that 318 is the numerical value of prayer and of speech, and that's what we win. And that fits with a verse that Ezra just mentioned, that it's not about strength that we win our wars. It's all about our spirit, the spirit of Hashem that's in us that causes us to win. Yes, David.
I just saw this yesterday. I think it was from Rabbi Heschel. He was explaining how is it possible? Is it 318 or is it Eliezer? So he says that there's a talk from the Rebbe where the Rebbe explains that they're both true, that there actually was 318 men, but at the same time, the Eliezer was so prominent and so forceful. It was him representing everybody, but those 318 men, because the Rebbe says that the verse can't go away from the plain meaning. So that's true. At the same time, it was Eliezer because his force, because he was such a great tzaddik, that his representation, his symbolism is as great as the 318 men.
Mm-hmm. So does it sound like the 318 men didn't really do much? They tried, but they couldn't really. Is that what it sounds like? Or he commanded them? He was like the commander of that group. So it was all given to his credit, or does it sound like they weren't? I'm just wondering how you understood it.
He didn't really say the negative part that they didn't do much. He said the positive part of what you said.
Okay.
And what he did, they obviously did enough to be victorious.
Right.
And he wanted to give the credit to Eliezer, and that's fine. But there were actually 318 men.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Shkoyach. Okay, well, if anyone else wants to share anything, we have 1 minute left. Any other thoughts or questions or insights? I don't see anyone's hand.
I just saw on YouTube last night, actually. If you go to YouTube and type in Rabbi Heschel Greenberg, he has a channel, and he has stuff that he just put up like yesterday and the day before, and people are putting up, him and Rabbi Manis Friedman are putting up current videos because of what's happening in Israel. And very, very insightful stuff, very interesting stuff.
Very nice. I'm glad for you to share that information, because it's good to know where there's good stuff available. So
if you go to YouTube,
take a look.
And go to the search box and you put in Rabbi Heschel Greenberg and also Rabbi Manis Friedman. And they both have channels with their names, and they talk about the current situation and the view of the current situation and how the view is of Rebbe's view. It's not their view, but they're representing the Rebbe's view.
Shkoyach. Very good. Have a wonderful evening and good Shabbos if I don't see you tomorrow. Sei gesund, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good Shabbos, everybody.